and welcome to Vampire by Gaslight, our Victorian horror and mystery. Tonight we meet a new face to the city of Edinburgh on this cold spring of 1881. Mr. Fletcher has just pulled into Edinburgh train station aboard the all-night 2 from London. And he gets off the train, and when he gets to the exit at the train station, there's a carriage waiting for him, as he was instructed there would be, to take him to his destination. It's a frosty and dark night. Smog lingers thickly in the air, though the streets seem reasonably deserted.
Freddie Fletcher steps off of the train. With him he carries a pair of suitcases. One in each hand. Oh, shit in hell. He carries a suitcase in each hand. And he's wearing a long, like a long kind of camel skin kind of overcoat. You know, a big, heavy thing. Under it he wears, like, you know, your usual sort of Victorian style 4-button suit, 1 button done up, watch chain, bowler hat. Oh, damn it, bro. I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to take this. This isn't, I'm very, very sorry. It's very embarrassing.
Okay. One doesn't know how to pause the scene there with no other players in the room, but...
No, don't worry. He's gone, I'm just gonna have to send him a text. Dickhead. Excuse me, I apologise. Please continue. I mean, he gets off and he walks towards the carriage.
You get into the carriage, standard cab driver sort of is sat on the top waiting for you to get in, and when you get in he starts to drive it. You notice that the emblem, there's an emblem on the side of the carriage like there would be on a royal carriage, and it has it's an F in emblazoned gold, which you could take to mean Fortescue.
Yeah, he takes it to mean Fortescue. And sort of rolls with it.
The train station was in quite an underdeveloped area, but if you're looking out the window, you see the landscape change somewhat over a little bit of time. Changes from sort of smoggy slums, and you drive through them up towards the more affluent areas of the city, where the houses are nicer and the streets are cleaner. And after about 10-15 minutes ride, you stop outside it's not a mansion, it's a very nice city house. You'd certainly have to be reasonably wealthy to live here, but not as wealthy as perhaps you might expect of the Duchess.
He glances over the place. Freddie Fletcher is a very grim-seeming man indeed. He hasn't said anything to the driver. He's just been watching the city go by, sort of breathing it in, trying to get the feel of the place. And as the cab comes to a stop, he picks up his suitcases, ducks his head, opens the door, kind of squeezes out. The doors on Hanson carriages are very small, and he's quite a large man. So he squeezes his way through. He has a cane under his arm as well, and he walks towards the front door.
Okay. The cab driver tilts his hat to you politely, and then carries on, presumably to go to the stables, wherever else they store the cabs.
Yeah. He wanders up to the front door and places his suitcases down, and takes the cane from under his arm, and with the large brass hilt, kind of knocks on it.
Quite Reasonably promptly, a young woman answers the door. She's about 21, 22, I guess. Brown hair, and dressed in a sort of maid's uniform. Um, Too young to be the housekeeper or the butler, who you'd assume would open the door, but this girl does, and she looks up at you and she smiles. Yes, sir.
Here to see Mr. Fortescue, if you wouldn't mind.
The girl sort of looks a little bit surprised or uncomfortable, and then you hear a more mature voice coming from behind you saying, "It's all right, Mabel. We're expecting him." And you see the head of a woman in her about late 40s or early 50s, who you presume could be the housekeeper, who gets the girl to stand aside
Um,
and lets you in.
well, because I completely forgot my Victorian etiquette for a moment. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out his card, which he gives to the housekeeper.
She looks at it and smiles, and she says, "Yes, of course, my mistress telephoned and told me to expect you. Please come in, Mr. Fletcher."
Thank you. He sort of picks up his suitcases and walks in.
You'd expect to come into quite a tidy and all-to-do house, but it seems that the housekeeper's a little bit put out because she's in the process of tidying when you walk in. It looks like there's been a party here the night before, and quite a large one at that. There are ashtrays with cigarettes and cigar butts everywhere, playing cards, the heavy stench of alcohol and smoke, and even the occasional stocking hanging from where it shouldn't be.
He looks around with his quite minute eye, and sort of as he walks in, and there's like a what's its face stocking hanging off of one of the brackets. It sort of touches his shoulder, he kind of brushes it off. And yeah, he carries on through. Always the maid.
She leads you. She sort of shows you into the parlour, which is about the only room that's tidy at the moment. Even that has a few playing cards in it. And she says, "I do apologise for the state of the house, sir. There was an unexpected amount of guests last night. I am Mrs. Mackenzie. I'm the housekeeper here, and the Duchess is my mistress."
He takes his hat off. Now he's sort of in the house proper. Sticks it under his arm. No trouble at all. Seems like home. Looks like Tower Hamlets came to Edinburgh.
She gives you a small smile, and she just says, "I will have Mr. Fortescue down to you shortly." And she exits the room and tells the girl that answer the door to you to go and fetch Mr. Fortescue from his room. And the girl does protest a little bit. And there's sort of a back and forth where the housekeeper tells her to do what she's told. And the girl goes upstairs hesitantly. What are you rolling for?
Investigation. He's looking around the room.
It's not the most exciting room in the world. It's a standard greeting parlour. Some bookcases. There are playing cards on the table with an empty glass of brandy. So someone's probably playing cards in the last 12 hours or so. There are a couple of empty bottles on the shelves which haven't been restocked. Doesn't look like anything much happened in this room, but or if something did happen, it's been tidied up recently.
Well, in that case, he just clears his throat and sticks his cane under his arm and waits.
You hear. It's not difficult to hear because uh, it's at quite a loud volume. You don't hear what the girl says when she knocks on the door, but you do hear a bellowing reply of, "I told you I wasn't to be disturbed." And then a sort of quieter sort of, "I know, sir, but," that sort of explaining voice. You can't quite make out. And then another bellow of, you know, "Don't come in this door." And then Mrs. Mackenzie goes up there and she tries to explain. And there's some raised voices from upstairs and some banging of doors and footsteps. But eventually, um, a man appears, first of all down the stairs, and then walking towards the parlour where the door's been left open. He's not very tall. He's probably about 4 or 5 inches shorter than you. Handsome, but slight, with a blonde hair and a blonde moustache, and very vibrantly green eyes. He matches a description of Christian Fortescue that Duchess gave you, and portraits that you've seen about her house. But when you see him, you get a quite a strong feeling of loyalty or respect, which is unnatural to you. It may be something to do with the blood that you were explained to about.
Yeah, props his cane and walks over to him in rather than kind of rambling that he's developed because he's got quite a slow, heavy walk. He sort of straightens up and his shoulders go back. And as he walks across the room, it's almost like sort of like a sergeant meeting an inspector. Like then he walks over and extends a hand.
Christian is not quite properly dressed. He's got a white sort of under waistcoat over a white undershirt and trousers and boots on. And his braces are hanging down where they haven't been pushed over his shoulders yet. And he starts doing this as he walks towards you. And he has a sort of annoyed glance on his face. But when he looks up at the sides of you, he thinks, perhaps not. And he reaches for your hand and takes it.
Mr. Fortescue, I presume.
You presume correctly.
Fletcher. Freddie Fletcher.
Mrs. Mackenzie informs me that your arrival was anticipated by her, but I have to say that it is news to me until I receive this letter. And he reaches into his pocket to pull out a crumpled piece of paper.
He eyes the letter and kind of puts together in his not completely incapable mind that maybe the Duchess didn't tell you about this particular arrangement. Sent over by Her Ladyship the Duchess. Am I mistaken in my venture, Mr. Fortescue?
I'm not so, my fellow, just caught me a little by surprise. He smirks, walking towards the drinks cabinet and pouring himself a drink. He starts to collect another glass and tilts the bottle towards you. Care for a shot of whiskey?
He looks outside. It's dark. It's Yes, thank you.
He pours you a drink and hands it to you.
Takes it and raises the glass. To your health.
He lifts the glass and tilts it towards you. And yours, sir. Before going to take a seat on one of the sort of sofa type things.
He stands vaguely erect and looks at the seat, and he gestures towards another chair. May I?
Christian, yeah, you may.
He
So,
takes his coat off to reveal a very barrel chest. He's a very large resonance man. And, he sort of slides back in and crosses one leg over the other.
I do believe your wife will also be joining us in a couple of days.
She certainly will be. I thought I'd come down and get the lay of the land first. She's a sensitive lady, is my wife, and she needs to look after the dogs, of course.
He raises an eyebrow but nods. Yes, well, it seems that the Duchess, in her infinite wisdom, has appointed you here, and I'm not at a liberty to deny her, though I can't say your services will be unwelcome, seeing as recent events have caused certain security risks amongst the family.
At
At
the
this
mention
point,
of security. Oh, after you.
at this point, Miss Angelique will actually enter the room, and whilst her hair looks slightly dishevelled, she's pulled herself together mostly from what they might have been up to previously. Um, yeah, you can probably guess that something was going on upstairs before they came down.
Um, he
It is,
looks between the two of them, expecting to see the usual rosy pallor of two people that have been fucking, and finding it mysteriously absent. And like, oh, apart from in Christian Fortescue, perhaps.
Oh, they
Um,
both have Fletcher of Health.
oh,
yep.
in that case, hopefully it won't be too much of an issue for him with that investigation role to make a good guess at what's just been happening.
Yeah, you can probably make a good guess. They're not going to be looking as rosy as two humans might be likely to, but enough that you can probably come to conclusions, especially with kind of the fact that Miss Angelique's lipstick might not really be there anymore. Um,
I was
Yeah.
just about to, you read my mind, Deborah. I was just about to say, with 4 successes, you see that, yeah, her lipstick is slightly not intact,
Absent.
and that there is a smudge of it on the white of a very small smudge on the white of Christian's undershirt, and
Um,
and there's slight indents of fingerprints on his forearms.
he as soon as she enters the room, he stands. He's a very traditional gentleman. Um, he merely inclines his head towards her.
Please don't stand on ceremony, she says as she proceeds to take a seat.
Christian also stands, but then he always does.
Um, well, thank you very much. Was I told her name in the?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Angelique Rosemont, or Miss Rosemont.
yeah, Miss Rosemont, Angelique.
They're not
Surprised.
on familiar first name basis
Oh
yet.
no. It'd
He
definitely be Miss Rosemont.
he inclines towards her and offers to take her hand. Says, Miss Rosemont, I presume.
Indeed. And she'll allow him to take her hand.
Freddie Fletcher. It is charming to meet you, miss.
Please do
Christian,
go on. She gestures to both Christian and Mr. Fletcher.
Christian sat back down and sort of assumed a faux casual position.
Along the chaise longue.
Yeah. And he says, he reaches for a silver cigarette case, takes out a cigarette and lights it. One of those old-fashioned cigarettes that's probably about as big as your head.
Yeah.
Cigarette lighters, you know, the whole oil and fuel thing. And he says, Mr. Fletcher has been sent by my dear mother to keep a watchful eye upon us after recent events.
I'm sure that's something we can appreciate.
Yes, I just wish that we had a little bit more warning. It looks like this letter has purposefully arrived today so that we wouldn't be prepared for his arrival, Christian says with his tone exaggerated. And, oh sorry, Christian does have etiquette 4, so he will offer you a cigarette.
I was gonna say etiquette 4. He'll know. I assume. So not only offer a cigarette but also light it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope the host stopped. Apparently, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, he nods his head and leans forward to light the cigarette. Yes.
No, carry on, sorry.
Yes, I was approached by Her Lady the Duchess at a men's function. Rather drab affair until she arrived, it must be said.
Christian smiles thinly. And
He off you.
and he says, and his lady wife will also be joining us as your chaperone, my dear. He smiles thinly again, extended. Yeah, you've probably not seen very many women as attractive as Angelique.
Oh, appearance 4. Okay. I don't know why I expected any different. He is somewhat startled by the Lady Rosemont's beauty when she first approaches, but acclimatises to it. He's not an easily flapped gentleman.
Very accommodating of her to make herself available for such a position.
Well, Rosie's been asking me to quit the force for years now, so figured a holiday in Edinburgh. An extended holiday.
And which force might that be?
Pardon?
You said that your dear Mrs. Fletcher has been after you to leave the force for years. Which force is that?
Scotland Yard, miss. Tower Hamlets.
Well, that is impressive.
It'd be less impressive if you would ever. Let me start that again. Take a walk through Tower Hamlets, Miss Rosemont.
Christian seems to grin. He's hiding it a little bit, but he seems to like Mr. Fletcher. He's grinning at you.
However, Rosie is a very, very sweet lady. I expect you two should get along just fine.
Her name is Rosie. How appropriate.
Quite so.
Of course, you know that our family crest is the rose. That's why I mention it.
I I had seen it, and the coincidence was not lost on me, Mr. Fortescue.
Well, I dare say that we will make your wife welcome, but I think that we might be a little bit more careful in nights to come about our housekeeping and the like. We don't want to startle her. Your good wife's sensibilities would be.
So far, she is ignorant to a few of the particulars surrounding this job, and for the time being, I'm sure you understand, I prefer for it to remain that way.
Well, how very considerate of your mother to insist upon a chaperone.
Yes, extremely. She must think that we'd be getting up to all sorts in her absence.
Of course, she did an excellent job of being my chaperone until then.
Really, yes. Wonderful, superb. In any case, your wife and yourself will have the cottage, I believe, from the grounds to live in, and I don't think that she will be exposed too much. So that you don't need to worry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Fortescue. You are indeed a gracious host.
For now, I think that I do have a few things that I need to finish up before tonight's proceedings. There's an important court case this evening that I'm required to attend. But priorities. He stubs the cigarette out in his tray. I will have Mrs. Mackenzie see you to your lodgings and provide you use of the telephone if you need it to call your wife or whatever if you're on the telephone. God knows who is these days. Can't work the wretched thing.
These new innovations do somewhat befuddle me as well. However, she would appreciate the call.
Good. I do think that you'll find Edinburgh most interesting, Mr. Fletcher. We have a chief inspector ourselves who is a very formidable man you might wish to meet at some point.
I would certainly appreciate meeting such an individual. Edinburgh these days is the talk of many people. Such an up and coming city, you understand. It would be interesting to see how the forces run down here.
Well, I'm sure that the police will be happy for any advice you can give them, considering the recent news.
News, miss?
She'll gesture to a newspaper that is resting on the table. The headline, if I remember correctly, was "Blood on the Sheets."
I know I read this article, but would you mind familiarising me with a couple of the details?
In character or out of character?
In character, what does the paper say? Just like a brief summary of what this article is about.
Well, a lady of the night was found murdered in an inn. Quite a mess, I believe, and involving two individuals, a gentleman and a lady, which seems unusual.
Well, quite. These vile acts do so seldom come with the fairer sex. In my humble experience, that is.
I'm privy to the fairer sex committing quite a few horrific acts, but then that would defile you of my horrific history. You can tell he's joking a little bit.
Yeah.
Playful smile on his face.
But like he will acknowledge the joke with a smile and like a small chuckle. But Christian Fortescue, who I'm sure does not need to roll perception empathy, will probably be able to guess that Mr. Fletcher is a very conservative man. Perhaps not as much of a libertine as Mr. Fortescue is himself.
Oh yeah, he's such a libertine. He really is. But the thing is that it's interesting that they would choose to perform such an act on a lady of poorer times, unfortunate measures, and to leave the body there on display.
Suffice to say, such brutality is not unbeknownst to me. However, to be faced with it as soon as I've made my lodgings.
It is unfortunate timing. I merely thought that it might be something of a topic that you may find of mutual interest. Should you be seeking friendship amongst the police of the city?
Well, it's certainly of interest to me. I would certainly like to find out some of the particulars. However, not being an active member of the constabulary, beyond me to go snooping where I'm not asked to snoop.
Oh no, but I heard once that once a blue, always a blue. You know.
He does not confirm, or importantly, probably more importantly, deny this particular assertion.
Christian smiles. I do hope you'll be comfortable, and we will have a further conversation in nights to come about your duties and such. And I'd like to have a conversation with your wife as well about her particulars.
Of course, Mr. Fortescue. She should be travelling up on the train a couple of days from now. I will make it known to you when she arrives.
Good.
We shall have to discuss the matter of not needing a chaperone in meetings where we'll be discussing matters that her husband would prefer her not to be aware of.
Oh yes, so I think that Mr. Fletcher is intelligent enough to know that she is a chaperone for the convenience of social gatherings with our high society friends rather than our personal day-to-day effects. Or at least I hope so.
Ah, it had seemed that way to me.
People have suffered for a lot less than standing in the way between me and Miss Rosemont's alone meetings and
He
conferences.
glances at the word of meetings and conferences. He glances from the lady's smeared lipstick to the spot on Mr. Fortescue's lapel. And I shall make it my business to make sure my wife does not interrupt any such rendezvous. She is a lady of delicate sensibility, and it would not do well for her to go poking her nose places where it was not needed.
Indeed. I am a gentleman's gentleman, of course, and would never cause harm to a lady. But she might be a little shocked should she go poking around where she's not wanted or required because of our differing natures, you understand?
Of course. At the mention of different natures, he's not visibly shaken, but it is he stiffens somewhat. It seems possibly thinking for the first time, oh God, my wife's going to be living with these people.
I understand from Mrs. Mackenzie that the Duchess will be, or is, around in the city at the moment. And the cold breeze that wafted over me this morning confirmed her presence. She will be checking in, no doubt, from time to time to making sure that you are settled and everything is above board. But other than that, she only visits the city temporarily and occasionally at the moment.
Well, I shall look forward to making her acquaintance once again. However, I've had a very, very long journey, as I'm sure you understand. If there is no other pressing business, it would not be entirely uncomfortable to me to make myself familiar with my new quarters.
Of course. Mrs. Mackenzie will show you. And he sort of... Mrs. Mackenzie's loitering. He goes to turn around to call for her, and then she's sort of eavesdropping outside the door. And he catches her in the process.
You broke up then, dude. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Christian turns to call for Mrs. Mackenzie, only to notice that she's actually eavesdropping in the door. So he doesn't need to call for her, and she pretends like she's dusting something, but doesn't hide it very well. And he just says, "Will you see Mr. Fletcher to his cottage, please?" And then start downstairs and work up, as a order rather than a suggestion.
I'm very sorry you broke up again. Did Christian head upstairs?
No. Did you hear that, Deborah?
I did.
He just said to Mrs. Mackenzie that she should see you to your cottage and then start her work downstairs.
Oh, cool. Sorry.
And work up very slowly, because that was
They're
sounded more.
busy.
Yeah, it sounded more like an order than suggestion. It was quite heavily edged.
Of course, being a very traditional man, he doesn't pay much mind to this and simply stands and picks up his suitcases, putting his hat on his head and putting his cane under his arm. If there is nothing else.
Have a pleasant evening.
And yourselves, sir, ma'am. And he turns on his heel and walks away. As you see the very broad, very straight back follow after Miss Mackenzie.
And she leads you out into the cottage, which is very nice.
Wonderful.
And you can settle down and go to bed if you wish. Christian...
But nice. It was definitely a one-bedroom cottage.
Yeah.
Nice. How cozy.
But, on the other hand, it does have its own little tiny kitchen.
He is a man of simple pleasures and his wife is a woman of simple needs. It will suffice for them both.
Christian knocks back the rest of his drink and stands. I do feel that we have a few matters to hammer out before the court commences.
Yes, a few matters to deal with.
After you, my dear.
And the two will make their way upstairs. And there will be some noise coming from the room.
And some silhouettes on the garden path, no doubt. But it is with that our scene will come to a close. Thank you, players, for playing, and thank you for whoever it was that is watching. Good night and sweet dreams.